morning, GaryCon!
Good morning.
Welcome to Dragonlance. Return to Dragonlance here this morning. It's nice to see everybody's faces. It's nice to see anything this morning. I guess we've come to remember back when we were young. When I first came to TSR, I believe it was 1982.
I came in 83.
Because you came in 83. I came in 1982. Larry, when did you come?
81.
81?
It didn't follow you because I was still new when you came. I mean, it's like, I came in the fall, you probably came in the winter, I think. Spring.
Yeah, it was actually, Laura and I arrived here on St. Patrick's Day.
That's right. That's the first year.
Yeah. Jeff, how about you?
March 1st, 82.
Wow. You and I were like practically the same day. 9 on 2 anyway. Yeah. I rolled into town with my wife and my then 2 children, Angel and Curtis, in the back seat of our Volkswagen Rabbit.
Quality car.
Quality automobile. We had driven from Logan, Utah, being the first members of my family to cross the plains the other way. And I'd been out of work for 6 months, I think. Couldn't get a job. Got my that winter we couldn't buy shoes for my kids to take them to church. So we had heard that TSR would pay $500 for an adventure module. My wife and I had self-published 2 night venture adventures at that time. One was called Rahasya, the other one was Pharaoh. And we thought if we could sell those to TSR, we could buy shoes for the kids and food maybe. But Mike Gray had already bought these in the Dungeon Hobby Shop and already was familiar with our work, and he was he? I can't remember what his position was at the time.
He was doing children's games, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Mike Gray?
Mike Gray.
About him.
What he was doing in 80
He was one notch above, who was the boss over there in the building? Got him years ago. Billy's boss. They shared the same office. He was our boss in the old hotel building.
My boss was Al Hammock.
Okay, well, he was
Above Al? Oh, Dave Sutherland.
Him and Dave Sutherland shared our office together, and he was somewhere equivalent to Dave Sutherland.
When I flew out for my interview, Dave Sutherland picked me up at the airport. And he looked so young that I thought they just sent some flunky, the office boy to pick me up, right?
They flew me up. Early. They really wanted to hire me. The only person over me was Gary Gygax. It's like everybody was 18, 20. I was 32. And I thought, man, I don't know if I want to go work with a bunch of kids. Do they know what they're doing? And so I went home, said no. Then Kevin Boone was the president at that time. He flew there, and my wife and I went to Kentucky, and we had a good supper. After we'd done, cleaned up the table, and he's going to talk business. He said, what are you making right now at Fort Knox? I was an illustrator at Fort Knox, civil service, GS9. It's 81, I just made about 20,000 a year. He said, I'll double your salary. My wife works. She worked at City Hall in town. She made about 12,000. So I doubled her salary. So I said, we just bought this house. He said, buy it and sell it for you. I looked at my wife, and I said, I guess you bought yourself an artist. They had a house waiting for me, so when I got there, I just met Jeff not too long. He's from Kentucky too, but we were from the same neighborhood. But I met him, he's in New York, freelancing, having a bit of a rough go.
Well, I was in Massachusetts trying to make my way in every now and then. Limited results.
And how'd you know you called me up there? I've got her good.
Yeah, well, I went to school with a fellow named Greg Harper, who graduated a year after me and worked with Larry at Fort Knox. And I met Larry through Greg. They had a RiverCon science fiction convention a time or two. So I went to that a few times. And Larry and at the time I was working in a popcorn factory, popping popcorn. So I had heard that Larry had taken a job at TSR, which I was not really too familiar with. I'd heard of Dungeons & Dragons, but I didn't know about TSR.
That confused me too.
So I knew him just well enough to call him up and say, well, what's the prospects there? And he said, well, they're pretty darn good at the time. In '82, we're growing leaps and bounds and expanding. So
I said, yeah, Del Hardy, you're good, Del Hardy. And we talked about salary. I asked for 40,000. The interview went great. I wasn't there, but Lava told me about it. After Joe, they flew him in, flew him back out. Lava came to me and said, your buddy's a really good artist. We want him.
Sorry.
He said, but it's sort of funny. He said, you asked him about his salary. Jeff's a nice guy. I told him, ask for 40,000. And I said, he don't know what he wanted, how much money he wanted. He said, to be wrong, he told me like around 10 or 12,000. And they said, so.
that was doubling my salary.
So I said, what did you give him? He said, we gave him 17. And he said, when he gets here, he said, after a month is hope, he'll make the same one as you. Good, and for us to be hired on as well, first of all, you didn't hire illustrators in-house. They usually take freelance, they're starved and stuff. And I was lucky to have this job at Fort Knox Civil Service. It was all the benefits and everything, so it was hard to give that up, to take a chance coming to this place. I didn't know if it was Dungeons & Dragons or TSR. I don't know what TSR stood for. I was getting confused too. But it all worked out really great. It was the best time, best place I've ever worked. It was the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Creativity was so thick there, you could cut it with a knife, somebody said. It was a wonderful place to work. It was a dream.
Creativity was overflowing. Were you just coming out the windows? Margaret, how about you? How did you get there?
I was working for a small publishing company in Missouri, and I had read about Dungeons and Dragons in Publishers Weekly. They were talking about the game was exploding and how it was, and I thought, it sounds like a really cool game to play with my kids because, they get to use their imagination. But I had no idea how to play. So I got a friend of mine who came over and ran a game for my kids and I, and they really loved it. And then I saw again, Publishers Weekly, I saw they had an ad for an editor for a game, for games. So I thought this is a company I want to work for. And I was looking to get out of Missouri. And So I sent in an application, and they sent me back a games editor test that I took. And of course, I knew nothing about the game, so I flunked the test, just horribly. And so they said, "That, thank you, okay." So as serendipity would have it, my agent at the time, Ray Piekner, lived in Milwaukee, knew Jean Black, who was the head of the book department at TSR. Jean told Ray she was looking for an editor who was also a writer, because at that time they were churning out the Endless Quest books so fast that editors were writing them as well as editing them. And Ray said, well, one of my writers happened to have sent in an application. So Jean walked over to the games department and pulled my application, and then they flew me up to meet with Jean, and we went to lunch at Popeyes, and Jean told me, she told me about the company, but I think they'd had a couple of firings by then. This was 83. And she said, I gotta tell you, it's kind of unstable, they've laid off some people and everything. And I said, I don't care, this just sounds great. And she told me then, one of the projects, and she hired me on the spot that day, and she told me then one of the projects I was going to be in charge of as editor was Dragonlance, this new role-playing game that they wanted to do that was going to be games and novels and calendar. No.
We'd forgotten to tell the company that we were making it.
I was involved in it, but I kept thinking, I never heard of a go-ahead or something like officially, we're gonna do it.
Well,
Yeah.
there's kind of a story
Jean
about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Jean knew.
Jean knew.
Jean was
so
part of
that's
the.
why.
She was part of the cabal. She was.
Yeah.
She was.
Well, after I known that, I'd have got mad. Because I was going and pushed it, talking to people like, come on, we got to get behind this. And it already been sanctioned, but nobody knew.
Well,
I would have got mad. Keeping secrets.
It worked.
well, Dragonlance was breaking a lot of rules, and I think that was one reason they wanted to keep it.
Dragonlance was breaking a lot of rules. Dragonlance was going to infuse story and character into games in a way that had never been done before.
Well, the biggest thing is there was only one world, Greyhawk Fantasy World. This would be another fantasy world. That's not good.
Well, and the company at the time was looking for the next big thing, and they had Mark Akers and Dave Zeb Cook were supposed to come up with the next big thing, because they were the big designers on the floor at the time. And we built Dragonlance just kind of on the side. Harold Johnson, and who I saw here last night. Harold Johnson and I came over to your house with the artists in your basement.
That was just you and Harold.
Yeah, it's just Harold and I.
And yeah, I was studio in the basement. And we was there probably 1 o'clock in the morning. And you told us the whole story of Dragonlance. And I'm like, you and Harold told me the whole story. And I'm like, I'm behind it. It's a great story. And so y'all wanted me to generate 2 or 3 little pieces of artwork. When they sold it to the board of directors, that was art to show. I said, sell it to them. Well, aren't you just going to say yes and do it, Harold? Well, we can't, And so it was, the project was there, and everyone that knew about it loved it, the whole idea. I mean, I'd heard the story, and it was great. And but it just, they wouldn't let us do it for a while. It was just sitting there.
Well, they wanted the next big thing. They didn't know that Dragonlance was the next big thing, and that there was actually not going to be any next big thing for quite some time. So, but everybody that was involved in it was given their best work. We were also, okay, we're going to do this because it's the best. We're fired up for it. We're behind the idea and the concept and the story, and so all of the creativity, on the floor in the art department and game department and the book department, we're all working together to build this.
That's the first time that ever happened.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird. It's like, I got there in 81 and 82 was probably 2 stable years. It seemed like at least employees felt stable. And all this stuff that came through the 80s, the Dragonlance and all this other stuff, all the consumers were loving, and we loved it. After 82, it became unstable, the whole company. So that's all of us working there. We didn't know if we was going to have a job in a week or a month. And they would go around having us to sign things like, I will not do any freelance work outside TSR. I never did sign one. And they'd say, where's your paper? The dog ate it. And I was freelancing on the side, not directly competitive. I freelanced at done a lot of car boxes, toy packaging, anything that wasn't competing with TSR. And it was a weird time. You love working there. It's the greatest place in the world, but it's like there's a ship in a storm all the time. Every once in a while somebody fall overboard, like where'd they go? They're gone. So it wasn't, in one sense, it's a wonderful place to work. On the other side, it was like a dangerous place to work. We had a big campaign going, and we kept losing people. Coming one day, well, your cleric's gone, and they made me the cleric. So, of course, I never played a cleric. I got him killed in 5 minutes. Our group didn't have a cleric, but just you didn't know what was going to happen from day to day or month to month, did you?
In fact, they nearly fired me.
Yeah, that's right. Bruce Nesmith.
Bruce Nesmith threw himself on the grenade. We were actually pretty early in Dragonlance. Yeah, Harold came in. We were all doing play tests downstairs in the office area, the boardroom down there. And Harold came in. He says, "Guys, I'm going to have to fire one of you," and it was going to be me.
Because you were the last hired.
Because I was the last hired. And Bruce Nesmith stood up and said, "Harold, let me talk to you for a minute." And he went out and he said, "Look, I can get another job," because he was a programmer. "I can get another job, so fire me. Whoever it is that you're going to take, fire me." And so he did. Harold fired Bruce instead of me.
There was good people
things like that happen, and it kind of changes the course of it. But yeah, if it hadn't been for Bruce, I don't know where we'd be. Probably not here.
I think what was weird about the company, you got all these creative people, writers, artists, game designers and stuff. There hadn't really been a place, I guess, we had that kind of people together. Wasn't there never been a game like D&D at that time either. It was all new to everybody. It was all super enthusiastic. Love what we're doing. But their leadership or whatever, we could have done it without it because it's like TSR was a goose that laid golden eggs. That was a good thing and a bad thing because then somebody wanted to own the goose, lock, stock, and barrel. And that's where the fights began. And that's where the turmoil was at. So you loved going in to go to work, but you didn't know you might get fired.
We were scared to answer the phone on Friday.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's a strange place. But you loved it. You stayed there to the very end,
Yeah, because we loved what we were doing.
Love
When we had a round of firings, we got all of the people who were working on Dragonlance together. And there were a lot less of us than there were that morning. And I can still remember telling everybody, we're going to do this. We're going to make Dragonlance. We're going to make Dragonlance not because we're going to get any money for it, because we're not.
So this is what it was.
This is what it was. We're not, and we're not going to get. Nobody's got any recognition for any of this. But we're going to do it because it's the best work we can do. And it's the right thing for us to do. It's the best work we've got. And everybody did. Everybody gave their absolute best to it.
Now let's jump ahead a little bit. Okay, Dragonlance started to get extremely popular. Okay, and
Much to the surprise of the company.
yes, and I'd done the covers. They were the writers. We were getting known, and so they decided there's no stars in the company. And my theory was like, and I went down to Mike. I you don't want to really do people come on.
Yeah, Mike.
You know, I'd come back one day and I said, what's this no stars? I said, Margaret Tracy have become stars. I said, treat them, give them an office of their own, treat them great because they don't want to leave here. They like working here. And also something out to me that was going to be a star. And they were talking to me, I'm like, you need everyone here to be stars. I said, because can you think, you got the best sellers, you got this and the hottest games. I said, because we all like to work here. We don't really want to leave. And they couldn't get to, that's the difference between your left brain and right brain people. I think they're like, they couldn't conceive of a person that was upper management to stay in a place and work because you love it so much. So they treat you guys pretty bad, give you the worst editing jobs to learn. And everything, and we were sort of forced to leave.
Oh, then the rain came in and that was the last one.
Yeah.
A pretty big straw. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that any of us wanted to go,
No.
because we didn't want to go.
All of it.
We didn't want to go. So, well,
Jeff weathered it all. Jeff talked
did
so
it.
much. He remained sort of a quiet guy, and he stayed right to it and stayed for a long time, longer than the rest of it.
When did you leave, Jeff?
Well, after they traded hands to Watsy and so forth, and to Hasbro, and Hasbro basically eliminated the art department, so
Oh,
I could either go or sit there.
you didn't go out to Seattle, did you? No.
No. They let me stay back for about a year or so with the intention, or the assumption that I would eventually move out there, but I was off-site for about a year or so.
You know, I will say God bless Peter Atkinson. He saved Dungeons and Dragons. And I know that a lot of people are kind of down on him for buying the company, but it was going bankrupt and we knew it. And even those of us on the outside knew it. And there was already talk that somebody was gonna, Random House was gonna buy Dragonlance and somebody else was gonna buy Greyhawk and somebody was gonna get D&D. It was gonna be broken up piecemeal. And Peter said, no, I love this company. I love the game. This needs to stay intact.
And that
He
was
paid a lot more for it than what it was worth.
and that whole thing was a fluke. I mean, Peter's group, they had a little company.
Yeah.
They came to me at Gen Con one time and said, we need a project, something to work on. So they sent me a financial breakdown of the company. And I went home, Gen Con, they had about $6,000 in the bank. Well, I had about 6,000. We don't have a whole lot of money together. What kind of project can we do? So I thought about it. So that next year, come back to Gen Con. They said, okay, we got something else. We got a new game. We think it's going to be pretty good. But it needs a lot of art. We need to get you to all the paintings you can. He said, I'm not going to pay. I said, well, what are you paying? I knew they had 6,000. They said, well, could you do them for free? Nah, I really can't do them for free. They said, we can pay $10 a painting. I said, you're talking about extra oil paints, $10 a painting. And I said, they said, we'll give you stock in the company, we give you all these options, everything in the world. And I said, that was a way of not getting paid for years. When we done that, I mean, they're not paying in.
It still
It's
is,
just promises.
by the way.
Yeah, it's still basically is. You just don't make those deals. So I said, no. So I knew some artists that were trying to break in. They were good. So I said, they'll probably do them for free, just get published. And so I told them, they started doing stuff. And one of those artist friends, his first royalty check, and he'd get 4 years. His first royalty check, he bought him a house in Denver. I'm like, man, did I miss it? Well, I got mad at myself, so I'm not doing any magic cards, period. And
That'll show 'em.
they changed, then they changed the contract where you didn't get all that goodies. And I was mad. So finally, I thought every artist I knew had done magic cards. Everybody done except me. So, and they told us they want to do something. Finally, I said, all right, you got any landscape cards to do? I could do a little landscape in the afternoon. And they used to pay $1,000 a card. I don't know what they are now, but it's like, that's still a good deal now. I mean, $1,000 for a little painting, but I missed the boat. I could have, some of these guys, I know when it all sold, they made $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just almost sort of unknown artists. Really cleaned up. Sometimes you miss the train really bad.
My first contact with Peter Atkinson was when he called me up. I picked up the phone. Said, I'm Peter Atkinson. I am so sorry. Okay.
For what?
Well, so he said, can you ever forgive me? I said, of course, Peter. Well, what did you do? What had he done?
Oh, that was, so my daughter was working for TSR at the time Peter bought it. And Peter, they bought the company. Peter came in and had an employees meeting. And then he was basically talking about all the things that had gone wrong with the company and everything else. And this is at the time that we had Dragonlance Saga had come out, and people hated it and people loved it, and they had split the fans, and they had the big, like Tracy said, the Macy's Day Parade, giant dragons floating around Korea. And so Peter talked about, and then he said, and who the hell blew up Dragonlance? And my daughter raised her hand and said, that would be my mom and Tracy. And so that's when Peter called me and said, I am so sorry. And I didn't know. Liz hadn't told me what had gone on. And so apparently he called Tracy.
And
but then...
It's okay. What you do.
But then he brought us out to Seattle, and we met with the game people, and that's when we decided, okay, Peter, we had to bring this back together, or at least try to bring it back together, which is how we came up with the War of Souls. But
So that's how you killed a whole lot of characters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was house cleaning, mostly. Yeah.
Well, at that time, we, personally, all of us, had been through a lot, and mostly over these things you love to do. They were just jerked around and dragged on. And we had to do paintings sometimes in a day or two. I went to cover painting in the afternoon. I refused to do it. Keith Saunders, but Jeff was the greatest guy in the world. They'd come into Jeff and get around him and guilt him into doing. And shouldn't be any guilt, but they would talk him into doing an oil painting cover in one afternoon. 3 hours or so. And he would do it. And it was.
But you don't get to put a caption on these things. I only had 3 hours. You can't judge them from the rest of your life.
I had to do a couple like that. I wouldn't sign my name to it, so I made up a name called Jack Fred. And I signed it Jack Fred. He done one. He's like, "What was that name you used?" Jack Fred. So he put. And so the girls over in typesetting when they give them credits.
Jack Fred was very fast, but not terribly good.
And one of the guys said, "Who's this Jack Fred?" And we call the artist. Who's Jack Fred? I don't know. When somebody said, "That's one of them over there. Just don't want to use your real name." They sort of catch on because it was hectic at that time, and they, for some reason, they just guessed. And the first one they guessed was Jeff. Said he'd do something like that. And Jeff's probably the one that was most likely wouldn't do something like that. So I gave him credit. Well, that was pretty bad in Jack Fred. Jeff Easley did it. And then they wised up and found out I was doing it, so I got credit. I mean, I could sign Jack Fred, but in the book they would write down. They had to write down who really did it. But they was missing it a little bit. I think he slid by it. He never got blamed for Jack Fred. I think I got blamed twice. But yeah, it was crazy work on there. It was, but you still loved it.
Yeah. Well, I remember they had an endless quest that was due out, like, I don't know, in a week or something like that. And so they said, well, and nobody had written the book. So they came to Roger Moore and they said, you two, each of you write half a book.
Of an endless
Of
quest.
an endless quest.
Wow.
How do you
So
do that?
Jean had done the tree, because you know those things you had to do a tree where everything was going and everything else. So Jean had already done the tree. She said, I've done the tree. You just, half of you write, you write this part, you write this part, and somehow make it me. And you got a day to do this. So we signed that book, Susan Allison. So if you ever see an
So
endless
we
quest
weren't
book-
the only ones.
No, well, we borrowed Jack Fred,
Jack Fred.
so
I didn't
we
know.
signed it Susan Allison, so.
Jack Fred and
But that-
Susan Allison had a thing going.
Yeah.
That
We like
was,
to talk about it at the office.
Yeah.
and that was the riddle of the Griffin. I remember that because months later, Jean came in and said, we just got somebody who is talking about a movie, A Riddle of the Griffin. I'm going, no, you're kidding. Nothing ever came of it, but we just thought of all the books that we, Riddle of the Griffin. Oh.
All of us were working under these deadlines. But I've got to say
Stress.
that pressure cooker that we had in the company taught us a lifetime of habits
Yeah.
that still serve us.
That we work on Saturdays and holidays.
I work 24 hours a day. I lived off of caffeine, nicotine, and junk food just to keep myself wired. But when I got out and started freelancing in the real world, you'd already been battle tested. You'd been shot and wounded and everything. So that was easy. Compared to, you have deadlines, so you got a deadline to do this painting in 3-4 weeks. It's like, I do 2 in that time, so I double up,
So I work with, because we occasionally work with like Hollywood, some of the IP that we're working on in my job. And they'll come with these like production lists of how long everything's going to take, and they'll say, okay, we need a creative summary for this project, and that's like going to be a paragraph, so we're going to make that a week. We need a beat chart for the entire thing, and we think that's about 3 weeks worth of work. And I'm thinking, guys, this is like an afternoon. Just turn loose. I got this.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly turning stuff in way early, and I'm going to have to stop doing that because now they're expecting stuff way early. I should, just write it and then wait for a couple of weeks. They'll feel a lot better about it.
But I think we loved our jobs and we worked. We put in a lot of extra hours. But with me, since I was worried about the golden goose going to die, I was freelancing for. I worked at TSR. I put in over 8 hours a day, and I was just. Sometimes I would leave the building till 9. It'd be dark, 9 o'clock. I'd go home, eat something, and work till 3 in the morning, freelance. And I did this. I was on TSR, and when I quit TSR, I moved back to Kentucky, I was doing it. And at 43, I had a stroke. And then 3 heart attacks, almost a year apart. It's just, you'd abuse yourself so much, and really not even check to see if there's anything wrong with you. It's like, you're just wired, you're doing it, you get it done. And it took me a while to really, because I cut my teeth with TSR, and that's how you get things done. You work constantly. And so you had to force yourself to ease up some, And, I still loved it all. That's the best years of mine. Crazy, but most fun. Have anybody have questions?
There's an enthusiast back
Well,
there.
Sorry, because Tracy sort of opened up a book there when he mentioned Hollywood, and inquiring minds do want to know what maybe some of the latest developments are. I mean, we would love to see a live-action Dragonlance. Don't know if that's going to happen, but we do know and saw some pictures of some of y'all over in Hollywood recently, and so is there anything you can share, possibly, with us? I mean, we won't
No,
let
that's
it out of the room.
I'm going to say, if it's done, do it right. There's a little guy in Kentucky gonna come out there and shoot him.
They're expecting it. No, we had, we've,
Signed an NDA.
well, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I wasn't actually going to say that, but no, we've long said that Dragonlance needs to be a film. And there was a Dragonlance movie that was made.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like the music.
It is the finest radio play ever put on a DVD. If the monitor's broken, it makes great listening. Because the soundtrack's fabulous. And
Kiefer Sutherland's
Kiefer
awesome.
Sutherland, I mean, the narrative, the voice acting was really great. I actually think the screenwriter did a tremendous job given the parameters that he was given to work under. And you know, all of that was great. If you just didn't have to look at it, it would have been. But as Margaret and I have long said, The Lord of the Rings used to be a Ralph Bakshi film.
Now it's Peter Jackson.
But now it's a Peter Jackson film, and now it's a classic. And I think that Dragonlance can be another classic, or could be another classic.
You think Peter Jackson bad guy?
I don't want Peter Jackson. I'm mad at Peter Jackson, but that's another story.
No, that's a good story. Yes. So yeah, hopefully that absolutely obtuse answer will satisfy you, at least for the time being.
I'll make do.
Mine's more an observation. I think the only way the outside could tell any of the turmoil as a lifetime subscriber to Dragon was that was the only constant we had, was magazine subscriptions. And you could tell who was paying attention based on who was either doing the writing or the editorial, and how often it was coming on time. And as it started dropping off and then vanishing for a couple of months, then you would get a little handwritten note, sorry, and a bunch of stuff. In the old days, I think the lifetime subscription was $100 when
Yeah.
I initially bought it in, I must have been 72, 73, I don't remember what year. But it was a long time ago. And your stuff was the first material that was color-coded, uniform. It looked the same. Nothing else had ever done that. People talked about Greyhawk, but in the 70s, it wasn't articulated as Greyhawk, a place. That was a castle. It wasn't a world you went to until Darlene drew the map. And that map showed up, I think, either at Origins or Gen Con. But there hadn't been a map before, so you just had the castle. And if you showed up to Dungeon Hobby Shop, you could play that. Gary would do stuff in the basement. You could go wandering downstairs. When we were kids, it was the only place you could buy hex paper. And you'd get to play the castle, but that was it.
Yeah, I had a lifetime subscription to Dragon magazine. When it stopped coming, I was worried.
Right, it just vanished.
It was time for me to die. But then, I guess it was maybe 2 years ago that I went to Gen Con, and on the Lifetime Guest of Honor page, it said, Gen Con Lifetime Guests of Honor. It said, Gary Gygax, deceased. Dave Arneson, deceased. Tracy Hickman. I was feeling a little on the bubble, actually.
Well, there was that Gen Con, the rumor ran around that you were
And of
dead.
course, Margaret is.
I know, yeah, I'm there, I'm on there too, yeah, but the rumor ran around that Larry was dead. And,
Is that like the Paul is dead thing?
Yeah.
If you like look at the D&D module backwards, it says that there's.
because I think you had one of your heart attacks on the way to Gen
I was
Con.
on the way to Gen Con. I didn't die. Still around.
But then they had the Larry Elmore Memorial, that thing of the,
No, I was in the emergency room, and let me tell you this, you know, they say pain chart 1 to 10, you know. And I was hurt pretty bad. I was in the emergency room. I said, what's your pain level? I said, it's about 5. Because I think a 10 would be cutting your leg off with a dull pocket knife. 10. So I knew that was serious. It was just a workup, and they asked me again, what's your, I said, it's like a 6. And so I said, she asked me one more time, and that was really, I knew this was serious shit, man. She said, what's your pain level now? I said, it's a 6 going to 7, and all of a sudden, I thought they gave me a shot or something. It's just like, backwards and blackness. My last memory was, I'm sure glad they gave me a shot. I woke up and I thought it was 5 minutes later or something. I was like, man, I feel good. So whatever you gave me, it put me out really good. And they said, no, your heart quit beating. We used the paddles on you 3 times. 5 hours later, you got a stint. And I'm like, okay. I said, I gotta go to Gen Con. I said, you're not going anywhere. And I didn't know it, but when I used the paddle so hard that it busted all the blood veins in my eyes, so my eyes was solid red, whole things. And I looked in the mirror, I said, that's good. I can be a vampire or something. They wouldn't let me, my kids went. But yeah, we gave her life for that place, man.
Still,
Yeah.
yes.
Can you talk a little about how you came up with the character of Raceland?
Oh, okay. So by the time I got to TSR, which was in '83, Dragonlance was well underway. And Dragonlance was the...
Underway.
Underway.
Yeah.
Underway. Dragonlance was the first game product that had ever used pre-generated characters, which Gary was totally opposed to pre-generated characters, did not like the idea at all. One reason that Dragonlance kind of went underground, but then that was when Gary was out in California, so it would chugged along. So my job was to take all the characters that they had developed, which was, Sturm, Raceland, Tasselhoff, Goldmoon, Riverwind, Kika, all the characters, and I had to provide background for them. I mean, I knew the names, I knew what they looked like, because Larry had done all the paintings. I knew their stats. So I knew Raceland was a 3rd level magic user, and he had a twin brother named Karaman, and that Karaman was perfectly normal looking, but that Raceland had golden skin and hourglass eyes. So I asked, we were having the meeting group at Dragonlance, and I said, so why does Raceland have golden skin and hourglass eyes? And Larry said, because it looked cool.
I think somebody else must have suggested it, and I just like the idea. I don't know. So confusing. I don't know. If I came up with a gold skin, I thought Margaret had or something, but it got there and it looked cool.
So I said, okay, there has to be a reason that he has golden skin and hourglass eyes. So I thought, well, it must have something to do with his magic. And then I thought, so, okay, what if he had to take a test for magic? What if all magic users in Corinne had to take a test for the magic, because magic is so powerful and dangerous, you just wouldn't want these people running around flinging off fireball spells willy-nilly. And what if he had to bet his life? If you failed the test, they could kill you. And I thought, okay, so now he has this twin brother who's, really good looking and strong and has probably been protecting Raceland all his life because he's known as the Slime One, and people would tend not to trust him, and how would he feel about that? So it was like all of a sudden the whole codependent relationship and everything else just... Raceland is one of those characters that an author gets that better than family. I mean, I swear sometimes when I was writing him, I could hear the black robes, the whisper of the black robes, and I knew from the beginning where he was headed. I mean, he was just one of those characters.
I know when the first time I painted him on that summer, Autumn Twilight was in the first book. And Margaret said, he's not really handsome. He's not, his brother's better looking. I don't want him really handsome. He also told me, later on, when I did the Spring Dawning cover, I was still trying to not make him real handsome. And she said, his road was red, but she said, make a shadow come across it to be dark, almost black, with a hint of color. That's a cool idea. And so I did. So by the time Legends started coming out, the next three, Racing was like the most popular character. And so I thought, he's not just that sort of ugly guy cough around all the time, So I told Mara, I said, can I paint him the way I see him now? And so I did the cover of him holding Chrisania. And they're like, I'm trying to catch some of his personality. And that's the favorite painting of most everybody.
That's a neat painting, kid.
And because then he'd come into his own. So he always has problems.
Yeah.
So, sticking with Racing and Caramon for a moment, when you introduced these characters in the Chronicles, then you started coming out with the Twins trilogy afterwards. Was that planned, or was it like, hey, we got these really cool characters, we need to write another trilogy?
I think we knew it in the back of our mind. It was like Tracy said, we all lived in the world. It was weird. It was really weird. It's because I would think of something and Tracy would come in and say what I'd been thinking. It was like we lived there and we knew these people. And
we felt like we were writing about a place that existed rather than making stuff up.
I think also, whoever had to fight so hard to get TSR to produce, to make, get behind us, make a book. Then it started making money. Then it's like, we want more books. It just
right away.
Flip-flopped.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was like, more books. And that's when you all started having problems, like, we've told this story. And so,
Well, we had, when we
get
first
other writers.
when we first done the books, they actually came in. Dragons of Autumn Twilight came in paperback, because we started, as you know, in paperback. Came in the warehouse in paperbacks. I got a copy of it and I handed it to our marketing director, and he looked at it and said, "Yeah, we could probably sell this." I mean, he didn't know about it before now.
well, they fired the marketing department, or
Well,
a lot of the
a lot of
marketing.
the department. That's true.
Well,
So it was just, it was news to them that we even had this thing at all. And gratefully, Margaret, as part of our resistance level marketing, went out and called the buyer at B. Dalton. It started out though
At a bookstore.
at a bookstore who you called.
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah,
find out.
because the book went out to the hobby. Because the hobby, they bought everything that TSR did, and they sold directly to the hobby. But the hobby had never sold a novel. But, most hobby stores, you remember what the old hobby stores were like in the 80s. They never, sold novels. So they'd buy 1 or 2 copies of Dragons of Autumn Twilight, and they'd set it maybe in front of the cash register or with the game product, But there was no way they were going to buy, they probably figured they were lucky they sold that one, and they had printed 30,000 because that was the smallest print run they could get. So they had, and Random House was our distributor into the book trade at the time that had been selling the Endless Quest books and everything. But they didn't, who'd ever heard of Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman? And they didn't think they could sell the novel. So we started getting calls because, so like one of you would buy the book in the hobby store, and then you'd say, "Wow, this is neat." You give it to a friend, and a friend would say, "This is cool. Where can I buy my own copy?" Well, they go to B. Dalton, and they never heard of it. So we're getting calls back. Where can I get this book? So Jean tells me to call a bookstore in Kansas City, and where I'd come from, to see what was going on. So I called this B. Dalton, and I said, "I'm looking for this book called Dragons of Autumn Twilight." And the manager says, She said, "I wish I could get hold of that. I've got people asking for it, and I can't find it anywhere. I don't even know who publishes it." So I go back, I report back to Jean, and Jean said, "Okay, call the fantasy buyer at B. Dalton, get his or her name and address, and we will send them a book. So I did. So I get them, I call them, and I said, I'd like the name of the fantasy buyer, and she said, just a moment, and then the next thing I know, this guy's answering the phone, so-and-so fantasy buyer, and I'm like, I can't say that I'm selling my own book. That was the first thought that crossed my mind. So I kind of garbled my name, and I said, and I'm with TSR, and we have this book called Dragons of Autumn Twilight. And he goes, oh my God. He said, I just got a call from my manager in Kansas City asking for this. And I said, wow, what a coincidence. So I told Gene, who told management, who told Random House, and they were like, we just forgot to mention it to our sales staff. Golly, we're really sorry.
You've mentioned a couple of times from different directions about how you're doing something new. You're infusing character and story into module writing and adding on things like calendars, and it's a many-headed creative beast. How much did one part of it inform the other, and how did you keep all that organized? I mean, did you suddenly say, oh, this chapter wrote differently than I thought it would? Can we change this module and vice versa?
The modules were coming out ahead, because the modules had all been done, or pretty much had been done.
Well, the first 4 modules were pretty much done.
Yeah.
When we were writing Autumn Twilight, and I think it's pretty evident actually when you read Autumn Twilight. You can hear the dice. We have this really, I mean, the Heroes of the Lance would make a really good D&D party, but in terms of being in a novel or a book, they are a really strange group to string together, and there's an awful lot of them.
Yes.
And so they were marching through the novel like a Japanese tour group. It's like there's this flag and everybody would follow them over here, and then we'd go over here and see this site at Saksaroth, and then we'd all have a little rest over there. And it was really unwieldy. It was difficult to write in that first book. But by the time we got to the end of the first novel, we had outstripped the game design.
Mm-hmm.
We'd caught up with the game design. And we were going to be writing novels ahead of the game design. And we discovered that it's much easier and better to write games to the novel narrative than it was to write a novel narrative to the game. And that, I think it was at about that point, which would be right around DL6, I think it was. DL5 was a compendium, but DL6 was when was the Ice Wall adventure, and it was right about there that we were writing games to novels, and it worked much better.
But you guys have done the calendar paintings, right?
Yeah. I think here's
did you
one
each
thing.
do 4? Was that the
Well, there was
Jeff
4
did
illustrator. I
Dragon?
think we done 3.
I did. I remember Jeff
3 each.
Dragon.
But I think Dragonlance, I believe, it's different than anything. Like I said, here's his novels, been around these many years. They're fantastic. I've read them. But their birth was different than most novels. Most novels like this, Tolkien or wrote books. He wrote them, they was published. Dragonlance came out from a different direction all over. And it was one of the first ones as the books were being shipped. We were doing paintings. All the characters and all 87 characters have been painted, and the modules and calendars, so you could read it and just look. There's a lot of ways you could see images of all this. So you were double whammy. You got the book and there's visuals of it all. That didn't happen in other stuff. I mean, Tolkien didn't even know what anybody really looked like until the Gilderbrands did Lord of the Rings calendar, and that calendar sold bajillions, and it put them on the map because the visuals were not there.
I mean, when I wrote The Death of Sturm, was late one night at TSR. It was by myself. I had the painting Keith had done of Sturm standing on the wall with the dragon. That was in front of me when I wrote that scene. And that was just really incredible to have that, the fusion of his vision, my vision, Tracy's vision, Larry's, Jeff's, all together. I mean, I think it was really remarkable.
That's actually one of That's actually at the heart of one of the reasons that I've come to GaryCon this year was to give my thanks and my everlasting gratitude to Margaret, to Larry, to Jeff, to Harold Johnson,
Yeah. Forget Harold.
to Carl Smith, to
Gene Black.
to Gene Black, to Keith Parkinson, God love him, to Golly Sanchez,
Yeah.
Who was gone before I got
who was
there.
gone before you got there. But
Michael
But
Williams.
he worked hard, and Michael Williams, the poet laureate of Kryn. I mean, we see Margaret and my name on the books, and we in a lot of ways we take point credit for Dragonlance. But the truth is that Dragonlance could not have happened and would not be what it is today without all of these people.
It was like there was a village behind that child.
There was a village of intensely creative and dedicated people who all worked together in this amazing synergy that turned Dragonlance into what it was. And you're part of that too.
And it was only going to be a 3-year thing.
Yeah. It was supposed to be a
Supposed to
temporary
die in
hold.
3 years.
It's the visuals with the artists that y'all picked, the synergy. I mean, for those of us, I went to B. Dalton and literally remembered that there was one little section that said sci-fi, and then literally you could tell when a new book came in. And you pulled that book to the side, and you had never heard of Dragonlance, you had never heard of the authors. But then you take a look at the gentlemen that and other people that have done the artwork, and like you said, when you were doing the scene with Sturm, it sucked you in, and right immediately you got your first dose of heroin almost, and we could not get enough. And so my thanks to basically, and probably from all other fans, is thank you all for working together to give us that, because that is just. We are here to show our thanks as well too.
Oh, well, thank you. Especially
you.
getting up this early.
I don't think anybody would be here. I don't think I'd be.
When we first brought Dragonlance out was at the Gen Con convention at University of Wisconsin
84.
Parkside in 1980. No, it was
84.
Yeah, it was 84. We did a play.
We have 2 people who were there.
That's right. We had a dramatic reading. Well, we called it a dramatic reading, but we wrote a script based on the novel, and all dressed up. We commandeered the stage at University of Wisconsin Parkside, and
The reason we did this, by the way, was because nobody at TSR was promoting the novel. So again, having fired the marketing department, or most of it.
so we had convinced them though to do poster calendars.
Mm-hmm.
They did poster calendars that had featured Larry's artwork of the big dragon helm.
Yeah,
and
Kitty
Ara's helmet, and then the calendar at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I've still got
I wish I
a
had.
couple of those. Yeah,
I've got
see me
about
later.
10 of them in a flat file. Never
Yeah.
been rolled.
But
Hanging on to them.
yeah, and we were giving them away
Yeah.
at the end of it. Margaret had her daughter that day wandering around the convention. Liz was how old at the time?
I don't know, 8, something
9.
like that.
This little girl wandering around the beautiful little girl wandering around the convention, giving tickets out to people. Saying, "Would you please come to my mother's play?" Anything we could do to put people in the seats to tell them about what we were doing. But that was the level of dedication that
I
everybody
think,
had.
really, when you look back, the people that really involved, the people that really pushed it, really believed it. So many people that really believe it. It's like, and in the back of our minds, like, even if it just lasts for 2 years, but just a little while. It's so good, it needs to be done. And finally it gets done. And in a way it backfires. It keeps going and there's more story. But those basic core books that was written, that's Dragonlance. And it's been around this many years. It'll be around a lot more years too.
Well, we hope so.
It's amazing how it all happened.
We have our own hopes and dreams. Yes.
This is, I don't know if this is something you guys would be able to talk about, but when you guys were writing the Lost Chronicles, there was, the period of time where you weren't sure the Hourglass Mage was even going to happen, and then all of a sudden it was, here comes Hourglass Mage. Could you tell us about what happened between the it's not happening to it is happening?
Oh, the Soul Forge?
No,
Hourglass Mage.
Hourglass Mage.
Well, that again was the company. Well, it all kind of started with the Soul Forge, which Brian Thompson was editor at TSR then, and Brian called me up one day and said, we're going to come out with a book about Raceland's test in the tower. Do you want to write it? And Tracy and I were working on Deathgate or something, I think, at the time. I'm not sure what. And then I said, well, I don't know. I've got contract and everything. And he goes, if you don't write it, I'm getting somebody else to write it. And I said, hey, I'm the only one who knows what happened to Raceland in the tower. I have to be the one to write it.
Played you on that.
I know. So I write the book, and I called Brian and I said, okay, I've got the book and I'll bring it into the office. And Brian goes, no, don't do that. I go, okay. He said, I'll meet you somewhere and you can give me the book. And I go, okay. So I met Brian and gave him the book, and he said, well, the reason is we're pretty sure the company's going to go bankrupt, like, any moment. And if it does, and the book is in my office, they'll seize it as an asset of the company. So Brian edited the Soul Forge, but he carried it around in the trunk of his car while he worked on it. That's when you guys took all your paintings home.
Yeah.
Remember?
Well, we've gone, and Keith and I, we went freelance at the same time and got a studio in Lake Geneva and took all our paintings. And the reason we could own our paintings, at first when I went to work there, TSR owned your art, I owned the original artwork. And back then a lot of companies did. That was sort of okay. Well, we hired Clyde, and he found out he didn't know it at first, but after so many months, he found out TSR owned his artwork. He said, well, that's just not going to cut it, So Clyde raised hell. And they took off down to see the Blooms and the Gaiaxes, whoever he had to see. And he just, we all thought he's crazy. Because I worked at Fort Knox for a while, illustrator. The government owned all the work, stuff like that. So it's like a lot of companies that happened. So I'd come back, he was mad and whatever, and he told him. And about a month later, it come out that we got to keep our own art. Wow, thanks, Clyde. And, so we could take her artwork with us. And maybe Clyde was hit the right time when they thought, well, this would be an asset of the company. I don't know. Maybe they let us have it, but whatever. But we got to keep our own stuff. Now, I think some of the Dragonlance art, it stayed disappeared until Wizards of the Coast owned, they bought it. Maybe 2 or 3 years, they sent some of my art that they still had back to me, and some was Dragonlance. And on Facebook the other day, people don't know what that one big go. Somebody, it was TSR or Wizards, still in the transition there, whatever, called me and said they were going to give that painting to Random House as a gift. But or whoever the remaining distributor. And so I shipped that painting to Laura, and it's on somebody's office or thrown in the garbage or something.
Matthew Coulter couldn't
Big
even
painting.
find it.
Huh?
Yeah, Matthew couldn't find it. He doesn't know where it is.
Well, it's, somebody might have took it home with them, and
Yeah.
let's see. I'd like to have that painting back. That was the first ever painting of Dragonlance. I did that one calendar cover first.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't want to dominate, but did Lord Soth sort of like his power after he became more
Lord
and more-
Soth was such a problem for us. I remember when Lord Soth came into being.
Yeah, you do.
I was in my office, I was working on DL8, Giants of War, and we were using battle system. We were introducing battle system, which is miniatures.
Doug Niles.
Doug Niles, mass combat AD&D conversion, a brilliant conversion. And so we were trying to figure out, I was trying to figure out all these army units that were attacking the tower, the High Claris Tower. And I said, oh, we could have this really interesting specialized unit, this Death Knight, and these Banshees in chariots. And I put this unit together, and it was devastating on the field of battle. It was just wiping everything. And as soon as I put that together, Lord Soth came into my head, and I knew everything about him. I knew his history.
One of those characters.
He was one of those characters that was just waiting there to emerge. And I knew everything. I knew his history. I knew what he looked like, what his motivations were. I knew everything about him. And it was so shocking to me. I remember I leaped up in my cubicle, because we all lived in these egg crates at the time, and ran over to Margaret's cubicle, and I said, Margaret, I'll tell you about this guy I just met. And then I dumped him in your lap. And
It was so cool.
She knew him, and she understood him, and so she started writing him into the second novel. Well, Lord Soth is such a powerful character and such a powerful personality that whenever he walks on stage, he just takes over everything. He takes over the story, he takes over the scene, he takes over the plot, and starts dragging it away with him. And then we have to go in, because we've got to actually get the book finished. We have to beat him back into a box, get him off stage somehow so we can get on with the plot. And okay, things move along swimmingly until he comes back again. But the moment he does, he drags off the story again wherever he goes. So while we respect Lord Soth, he causes all kinds of problems for us as a writer, because he always takes over the scene every time.
Well, he redefined Death Knight for D&D. Like, before Lord Soth, Death Knight was kind of he's kind of cool and the Fate Folly over here, and then you write him up and it's like every Death Knight was some variation on Lord Soth from then on.
Yeah.
You also did the same thing with vampires, if I remember right. You wrote a character for a vampire.
I've had a
then-
pretty good run with vampires. Actually. That's why they asked me to run 2 sessions of Ravenloft here.
Can spectators watch that session, Ravenloft?
We had so much. Did we have a good time last night?
Yes.
It was a good game last night. There was much fear going on last night. And when I run a gothic horror game, it's gothic horror. So.
What time is the game today?
It's at 6 today, gratefully, instead of the 8 o'clock which we started last night to accommodate my flight schedule. But yeah, it's at 6 o'clock today.
Can we all crash it?
I'm good. I don't know. I barely figured out where this room was this morning. Yes.
So, who had the concept of Kender? And
Oh dear.
because there's a love-hate relationship with him. Dungeon masters hate him, players love him. And was Hasselhoff in any way kind of brought on by someone that you worked with? His like pranks and his
Well, Tasselhoff and Kender in general are a little bit of an amalgam because a lot of people put into that. Kender originally started as Kinder after the German Kinder, but we changed that when someone pointed out that Americans couldn't distinguish between Kinder and Kinder. So it became Kender, like Kendall, but so we had to make that distinction. Originally, the seeds of that came from my dislike of thief class. I understood the game reasons why we needed a character that had those capabilities and abilities, but I just hated the idea of people pretending to be a thief. But then I thought, well, what if they just did not understand ownership? What if they were like that neighbor down the street that borrows your lawnmower and forgets that it actually belongs to you, you know? And so that idea of innocence, right, is where the Kender originally started from. Although the truth is that Kender, as we know them today, is in a large part due to Roger Moore.
Roger Moore wrote the first
Who
short
wrote the short story.
about Tasselhoff, A Stone's Throw.
Yeah,
There it is.
and that very much set the direction. Roger Moore's work in that very much set the direction of Kender after that.
And to me, when I was writing him, I kind of pictured Harpo Marx and the child actress, I think her, Margaret O'Brien, and Meet Me in St. Louis. If you ever watch that movie, she tells the most outrageous lies with the most innocent look on her face. And I always thought, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Margaret O'Brien was great in that film.
I met
Judy
a
Garland.
girl wife killed me right now. I was giving art classes. This woman came. She was like 53 years old. She stood about I'm 5'5". She stood about the ear on me. She wore her hair in a top knot. She was slim. It was like Tasselhoff's face. We had a lot of, the folding tables, and I would say, I'm going to work on this, and y'all can come around. When instead of walking around all the tables, she would scamper under them and just pop up. And she'd read Dragonlance. She loved Kinder's too. So anyway, I was like, God, you're like a freaking Kinder. So we took her right down to the studio. They wanted to see it. Got back the next day, and she come up to me. She said, I don't know how to say this. When we got back, I sort of, I got this. It's come from your studio. It was like I had some props, like a leather band and stuff. She had 3 or 4 of them. She goes, I don't know. I ended up taking them. I don't know. I better give them back to you. You can have them. Well, she just gave them and took off. I'm like, Kinder, man, it's a real life. So we wore jeans, little sort of leather-looking shoes.
That's kind of scary, Larry. I'm sorry.
Her name was Susie.
Thanks, we'll write that down.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah,
For me, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions Trampus wanted me to ask, if possible.
Hey, Trampus.
With Bob Salvatore writing Drizzt novels again, do you think there might be a chance, even the slightest, for Dragonlance in the future to make a return with new books?
Can I answer that?
Oh, sure.
Or do you want to answer that?
No, I'll smile and wave.
Okay.
Sounds to me like there's some good stuff from Dragonlance coming out.
Margaret and I have been tremendous writing partners and great friends for over 30 years. And we love working together. life is what it is, and sometimes, you know, we have to go off and do other things and do other creative works. But we've always enjoyed it when opportunity has provided it to come back together and to write. We also love Dragonlance very much. So Mark and I have talked about this and the possibilities of all of this. And should the opportunity arise to do so, both of us, I think, would be interested in pursuing something. So we'll see. How is that? Did you like it?
I like that.
And when Katira told him not to night Trampus, does that mean there might have been other nights?
Yeah, tell Trappist in his dreams.
Yes.
I could consider working on another Rose of the Prophet series.
We love Rose of the Prophet, but then we love all of our children. And there are many worlds and places that we'd love to go back to and visit. But part of our problem has always been that we've always found new places to go. We're not unlike Kendra, she and I, in this. We always see something new and interesting over the horizon, and that pretty shiny thing kind of distracts us and carries us off into new places. So we certainly love the world. Whether we'll ever get back to it or not, I don't know.
It's like when you do something, it takes a life of its own and it starts controlling you too.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
I mean, it's good, but yet, it's like you give birth to a child, it grows up to be a big child and still in your life, you know.
That's
Good
right.
and,
Then
it's
how you
a
gonna
good
get
and
them out of
bad
the
thing, and it's like that. Well, it's all really a good thing, but it does take over parts of your life, you know.
So I want to ask Jeff, which was your favorite Dragonlance painting?
Well, just possibly the first one I did for the calendar. I know that was Bernard in his throne room, you know, with
Yeah.
the dragon and so forth.
Yeah, that was mine. I like
Because
it.
that was, as much as anything, was the fact that it was, well, we were really psyched to do a calendar. I
Yeah.
remember in the art department there, Tim Hildebrand had done the calendar the year before. So, you know, he was an artistic hero to all of us then there at the point. So we were, we were just really geared up to really try and match, do our best to even match him, So it was, and to TSR's credit, they kind of gave us, putting limitations on us, and we took, and Larry and I he did the cover, and I did that painting. I think it was the first two that we had done. And because I remember they made us march them around the company meeting down in the warehouse the one time, I felt like a hard girl in a fight or something. But I think, we were just like, we wanted to put everything we had into those, and so it was, I don't remember laboring over that one.
So now, were you the first one to paint Verminoid? I think Jeff, you must have been.
Well, it was all based on Larry's designs. I give credit where credit is due. We did 95% of the concept work for all of the Dragonlance art before
Well, I
the rest of
sort of
us started.
designed Kiera's.
We did the armor and stuff, so it was just like a variation of your
then
armor designs.
it's almost like, okay, I see sort of how you make this kind of armor, so then, but you're still free to redesign, armor, so I didn't, Vermeer was like, he's great, but he was the one to do it. It was, I thought, that's Jeff's, he's the one to paint him. I did the Kiera and tried to, even when I did the first book, Winter Night, I used a model. I had a photo of a model I'd taken as a girl, just an athletic kind of girl. And I drew that, and I drew the armor on top of that. So that was really a girl's form, because nobody knew that she was a girl. And so they found out later that, yeah, it really was a girl. So I felt comfortable handling that armor. But then when it comes to evil and monsters, Jeff was the master on that. I draw something trying to make it look evil and look like a kid now. Halloween. He do something evil, it looked evil or scary. So he did all right. He was the right one to do. I loved it.
Did you ever have artwork that you presented, they didn't want it, you put it in a drawer, then you wait until there's a different crew, you bring it back out again, and they're like, yeah, that's great, let's go with it. Did that ever happen?
No, there wasn't time for it. It's like, if you had to do something, you had to do it, get it, finish it, it's done, move to the next thing. There was not enough time to ever think too far ahead. And, it pushed you creatively to your limits all the time. Which I think now is a good thing. It taught us some really good, tough habits that a lot of other people didn't have. You know, even for writers, you gotta write this, you gotta write it now. You can't be in the mood.
No.
It's gotta be done now. You do it. It's like coming in, we gotta do this cover, it's gotta be done now. It's this evening. And you know,
It's left us with our own set of values, though. You know, every now and then we'll find a writer who's, I can't write today.
I'll
just get in the seat and put some words on the page.
It really did. You run into some of these artists, well, I have to put inspired hell. Sometimes you gotta do. You just do it. I just hate that kind of. These sissies, it's gotta be. I gotta be inspired. You gotta get the shit out. And that's how we were broke into this, and it saved my life, my marriage, my whole family, the income, is because you gotta get it done. I just think of TSR days when I was working full-time TSR, doing a cover for them daytime, doing a cover for a model car box at night or something. And it's like, do it, get it done.
The interesting thing for me about that is that I was only really at the company for about 4 years.
It seemed longer.
It seemed a lot longer. We got about a decade's worth of work in 4 years. Yeah. And yet those 4 years, we all look back on those 4 years as being absolutely key to our personal and our professional life.
Yeah.
Because those 4 years, the crucible of those 4 years, really taught us a lifetime of craft and a lifetime of habit that has served us ever since.
And friends that we have kept
and
all our
friends
lives.
that we've kept all of our lives.
I mean, you don't work at some place, and here it is, 30 years later, you're still going back to the colleagues you work with and you love them. There's a bond. And, I mean, that don't happen with most people.
I mean, I worked at this little publishing house for like 11 years, and I couldn't tell you to this day the names of the people I worked with.
No, it's like working at TSR is like the people you did, it was a deep bond. It's like, if you said write down everything's happened to me in the last 15 years, I could probably write you a little bit in a tablet, because it's just, you see, write down what happened in those 6 or 7 years at TSR. I can write you all the volume. I mean, book after book, because it's like your life slowed, it speeded up, but it slowed down at the same time. It's like you were on some kind of high, you just took so much stuff in. There's so many memories, so many things, all crammed in this very short time. It's like you lived a whole lifetime in that short time. And to me, the last 15 years, like, sort of a blur, same stuff, you know. But it was different. There was stress, double stress. There was stress when you get the project done. Stress, the whole place might go under. But at that same time, it was like you was working under automatic gunfire. You kept your head down, you You still got your job. And it became a band of brothers, I guess. We suffered it all together. It really changed us all.
I haven't been clear why. Seems like at 1 minute it's doing great, and then it's going under, and then something comes along. What was going on? How did that happen?
Well, I have my own theory about that, but part of that's also because of what I'm doing now, because I'm seeing it again.
Okay.
In a lot of ways. And that is, I think that you get very creative people who have an idea, and they make this idea, and they're like the initial entrepreneur, and they have this what my wife calls an entrepreneurial seizure, and they come out with something that's fabulous and new and amazing. And then you get a bunch of guys together in a garage, and it's like a garage band. It is a garage band. It's a bunch of guys who get together in a garage and they make stuff, and then they send it out, and people like it, and then more people like it, and they have to send out more stuff, and
more people
like it, and then so all of a sudden now you have to start dealing with businessy crap, you know, like warehousing and inventory,
bean counters
and shippers, and you no longer can be a garage band. Now you have to become transition into a company and an organization
department,
which is almost anathema to the whole garage band, right? It's like you're a rebel with this garage band, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're going to have to do like cover songs of Carpenter music. It's that transition that trying to get from being the rebel entrepreneur with a cool idea to actually making it function as a product in the world of commerce.
Drowning in the overhead bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Which is really what happens.
Which is what can happen. And so you, in the case of TSR, we had a lot of money coming in, but a
lot of waste.
But a lot of money, more money was bleeding out because we were.
About that last night.
Yeah, it was just, you know, where the people who ran the garage band really didn't have the skill set to run IBM, you know, and so they would make investments in things that were
needlepoint.
Yeah, like we'd buy a needlepoint company, or we'd raise the Lucius Newberry, or we'd
the train that was
or buy a train track between here and Chicago so that we could run the D&D train back and forth and use that to like help ship goods as though that were an excuse for buying a railroad. You know? It was like playing Monopoly in real life.
Yeah, there was you're there every time we come to work, you're like, what are they going to do next? And what kind of stupid way they can figure out to waste money, you know?
And so
they would.
And so they weren't. The money was coming in at a tremendous rate. Popularity was rising at a tremendous rate, but we were bleeding it all out on crazy things. And it's sad, but this happens to a lot of companies. It's not a unique story to TSR by any means. And usually, what happens is what happened. The garage band company that was having trouble transitioning into the real world of commerce would get bought out by somebody who actually understood how this worked and could capitalize on that. And then they get bought out by somebody else who sees it as an investment as opposed to having any necessary real interest in in the product itself. I can remember talking to a marketing person once and asking them what it is they're looking for in a new product line, a new game product line. And she's talked to me for 30 minutes about what they were looking for in a new product line, and none of it had anything to do with content. it all just had to do with product placement and positioning and market viability, and I had no idea what she was talking
All about money.
Well, sure,
Oh,
but it's, it's what,
that always trumps your heart. It trumps your feelings on something, the quality. The money trumps. That's where you have to cut the corners or get it out. But that's how life is.
but that's how it is. For those of us who are creatives in this world, for Jeff and Larry and Margaret and I, the real trick is to be able to do the art inside of that.
Yeah.
To be able to survive and still speak truth to power, still create beauty and art and value, while satisfying the bean counter.
I look back and thought, I think Dragonlance and all it was meant to be, because so many things, there's so many reasons it should not have been, but somehow it happened. And I know everything you do is work and stuff, but I just didn't think it would ever make it, but it did. And then on top of that, I keep stepping back. I can't believe it's still where it's at today. You know?
Yeah. What else are we talking
It turned
about?
into, I hate to use the word, it turned into a classic, you know.
Good question.
Well, technology seems to put the industry in another transition phase again. Love the podcasts. I love the print-on-demand aspect of the industry as well too. What advantages maybe or disadvantages do you see of the impacts and things that you may be looking forward to as we're going into this transition phase, or maybe some things that you're not looking forward to as this, because in some ways it's easier access to your fans, which also keeps everything alive, but at the same time too, technology is going away from bookstores where you have physical products. So any comments from any of them?
I don't know, for me, I like connecting with the fans all over the world, like on Facebook. I think that's just amazing. I mean, I've learned so much about what happened with Dragonlance in other countries that I had no clue. Like, for example, I met a woman from Russia who had said Dragonlance during the old Soviet Union days that the books had been smuggled into the Soviet Union. And that there were whole groups of Dragonlance fans that would get together and talk about Dragonlance, and we didn't know any of this until the Iron Curtain fell. So I always figure us and Reagan, we took down.
He might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we've actually enjoyed the Dragonlance musical.
Oh yeah,
in
Russia. Yes.
In Russia, if you haven't seen that, by all means, go on YouTube and find the.
All you have to do is type in Dragonlance musical, and it'll bring it. And it's touring in Russia now. I found out.
And it's pretty cool, actually.
It really is.
Even in Russian, it's pretty
it's
cool.
the story of legends. And
The characters look prettier than the paintings.
Yeah, get on that, will you, Larry? I think that, and technology, I think, changes everything. Technology has changed publishing entirely. I'm not, there's good and bad in that.
Yeah.
It's made it more available in some ways. In other ways, it's made it more difficult to reach an audience. I personally miss the old days, but then I'm an old guy, where you'd go into a bookstore and you would look for that book that called to you, and hold it in your hands. And I know it may sound a little odd, but I always felt that I knew the book that I was supposed to pick up. And that going to the bookstore was a matter of finding that book that I was supposed to pick up, that somehow called to me, and maybe it was the image, maybe it was the back, but there was something about holding the book in my hands that was an essential part of finding the book that I was going to read. Can't do that now.
Technology takes a little bit of soul out of it.
It does. It has a tendency to take a little bit of soul out of it. But then on the other hand, technology also provides us with new opportunities and new ways of telling story. the I work at a technology company now. I'm director of story design at a technology company, and we're now pioneering new ways of telling story in experiential narrative, which is a whole new way it's a whole new way of portraying story. We can't tell a story in experiential narrative because it's not a passive medium, so we don't tell it to you. It's a story that you have to participate in, which means that every story is unique. So technology provides us new ways of experiencing story, which is also a positive thing in terms of technology. As I look down through the years, technology has changed the way we experience story, but it doesn't get rid of story. It changes the way we experience art, but it doesn't get rid of art. It just gives us new ways of doing it, and if we're willing to change with it, then it can provide you I think technology can provide us opportunities rather than.
Do you guys need to go?
No, I just didn't know what to come.
Yeah, it's a 5-hour lecture, did you know?
Because they have booths in the art.
Oh, they should probably go.
Well,
Good stuff.
Didn't open until 10.
Oh, okay.
I just want to open, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Just a quick question for Larry and Jeff. I work in the art industry, and so I'm just wondering, when I first started, it was pencil and drawing, and today you barely see any of that. Everybody's on the computers. Did you guys ever transition to that, or just always did by hand?
You first? It took me a good while to get Photoshop and so forth, you know. I know that, well, when I stayed back from not moving to Seattle, a lot of the guys out there, they were in-house and they had all the access to all the Photoshop and all that stuff, and I didn't have that at home. So I was a little, and when I finally got it, I tinkered around with it, but I felt like I was holding my breath or something the whole time I was trying to do it. I was never comfortable, you know. So a couple of times I think it wasn't a magic card by some small company asked me to do some cards or something. Well, I'll do these in Photoshop, you know, be all high tech here. And I did a couple of them, and they suggested perhaps I should stick with the old. So I didn't really have too much problem with that. So I just, you know, I'm kind of old school. I like to have something that I can hold my hands when I'm done. You know, I don't like the idea of sitting, you know, working for days and just having a file, a disc or something. So it's fun to play with, but I don't think I would ever really try and do finished work with it at this point.
I look at it this way. Right now, I'll be at some convention. Some of these newer conventions, which they really cater to a whole media, the anime, manga, everything. So you got these 15, 16-year-old, 18 coming up and got all my art out there. And they're like, wow, usually one of the girls will see something like, oh, look, this is so pretty. And usually a boy with them, he'll like, what programs do you use? I'm like, I paint with a brush, with a pencil. And oh my God, how do you do that? They're all amazed. I'm like, we've only been doing them that way for several thousand years. In your lifetime did we stop? And I still like the old 1,000-year method, okay? And it's like, I just get pissed. But the challenge of getting your concept on a physical board, paper, pen, canvas, whatever, That's the love to me. That's the love. And it's a real object. It will last long after my great grandkids are dead if they don't burn it up or something. So it's permanent. I know it's, you know, I go to houses, you know, rich places, galleries and all this stuff, and castles, and they got originals on the wall. It's been there for hundreds of years or a few years, but that is a piece. It's a concept. Somebody's heart, or whatever, they've tried to do something, make a statement. It's on that. There are DNAs in it, beard hairs in it, a piece of flesh is in it. You know. To me, it's like a living thing. And the other, and also the farther you're removed, it's like take 5 artists, come on, all brushes, and tell them to paint the same thing. When it's all done, you can't tell who did which one. The airbrush is a common denominator tool. Makes them all look the same. Technology, the way it is right now, is to some degree. I can spot 90% of the time something's computer generated. Like something that lacks a little heart or something. I'm not at war against it. It's here. As a young illustrator today, you've got to use it to crank it out to make a living, because the prices hadn't gone up. Used to, I could get paid $2,000 or $3,000 for a painting, and I could pay everything for the month, you know, and it'd take me a month to paint it. And your income was sort of kept up with the price stuff. Now, it hadn't gone up. So if I was a young illustrator breaking out now, I would do computer art. I'd have to survive. And it's getting good, better and better, the computer art. And it's here to stay. And I would say, a friend of mine would always tease me, he said, yeah, in a few years, they'll have just a program called Larry Elmore program. He said, all they do is punch it in, and it does a painting just like the way you paint, your technique. You're used to that. Like, I don't care. I'm going to still paint and draw the old-fashioned, because that is my personal passion. And I decided in the 90s, when everything, late 90s, when was going, all artists, I was forced to go digital. Not much of a choice. I thought about it, like, all these years, all my fans, back then, they were teenagers playing D&D, and I was 32, 33. They're all growing up. I've run into my fans that's every occupation you could think of. Some are very rich, wealthy. I was thinking, I think when they get, you know, their 30s and 40s, 50s, they'll be buying more original art, you know, to hang in their new homes. And not just prints, but original. And so I'm going to stick with the original. And I'll make prints, but then there's the originals. And now my originals sell for more than I ever dreamed they would. And I didn't set the prices, so I set it for themselves. So I made the right choice to keep working with originals. And
there's a friend of mine, John McCutcheon, he's a folk singer. He says that there's a sad moment for him when he finishes a song in his studio, because he knows that it will never be heard as well again, that the music's going to be compressed into an MP3 format when it goes out, and that it's just not going to sound as good as he heard it in the studio, and that no one will ever hear it as good as he saw it in the studio. When I was in Florence, we're scheduled on the tour to see the David. Now, I've seen the David. I'm sorry, all my life I've seen pictures of the David. I've seen little models of David. I've seen it. Until I walked into that rotunda, I had not seen it.
Yeah, yes, I had the same feeling.
Because there was a jaw-dropping magnificence to seeing the David that could not be captured on film.
Presence. Yeah.
There was a presence of being there. There was just something about the actual art. When I was in Dublin, at Trinity College, I visited the library there, and they have the Book of Kells. And every day they turn a page and show you another page of the Book of Kells. When I saw the actual Book of Kells, there was a luminosity to the page, a translucence to the parchment. The ink lines were so incredibly crisp, and the color was so amazingly vibrant, and the gold leaking in the illustrations was so incredibly beautiful. I bought a book because I wanted to take it home, show my wife this amazing thing that I'd seen. And the digital reproduction, as good as it was, and the art book was nowhere near the glorious impact of the hand art of that book.
Yeah, like even in oil paintings, I've seen a couple of mine I've seen on the museum lighting, they glow.
Yeah.
And what it is there's huge glazes and stuff and painting that. But the light goes through glazes and goes through those colors and hits the colors underneath there and bounces back out. I see you just want to make prints. I sell prints, they're flat, there they are. The original can have a life to it. And that's why I like to stick with that, because I can tell my wife I'll paint till I die trying to get one right.
Strangely enough, our hour seminar is almost coming to a close 2 hours later. However, a couple of quick things. I'm kind of pleased to be here at the Geneva Resort, because when I first came for my interview, was flown out here for my interview to take a job at TSR, Harold Johnson brought me here to dinner at the Playboy Club. Yes. And for a Mormon boy like me to say that I've been to the Playboy Club is really kind of a distinction. So being back here kind of brings all of that full circle, because my job at TSR really started here. Second thing I wanted to mention is that my wife Laura is here in the back. And it was while driving out to that job at TSR and wanting to come up with something that the company would find a good reason to pay us to design games. It was while driving across the plains to take this job that Dragonlance was born. And she and I together on that long drive came up with that name, and with the seeds of what all of this became.
And I want to mention that I recently did an article about women in the early days of gaming, particularly women who worked at TSR, and talk about first, Laura Hickman was the one who came up with the idea of putting story in game modules.
So you might want to see her work.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for coming
And
today.
big thanks to Ernie. Ernie,